And we are back, Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, sharing with you guests from around Indianapolis, Christians who are doing good based on Titus chapter 3, verses 1, 8, and 14. Our focus is always to introduce folks with each other, with the Indianapolis community that are doing good things. And those good things can come in lots of different varieties. Boy, we've had folks in here that do great things that relate to, well, let's say fast cars and barbecue, and everybody over to dealing with folks in the inner city who are working with young people. So all different kinds of folks. Warp and Woof Radio is sponsored by the Comenius Institute. At Comenius, we cross 3 bridges. The first bridge is into college. And at college, our focus is always the same. That is to help Christian young people to think Christianly about the world around them, and specifically at college, the disciplines and the academics that they are pursuing there. So just yesterday, for instance, I had a long conversation with 3 young men about some very important and interesting ideas that they were confronting in their classes on economic theory, for instance. That was one of our discussion points. So that's what I'm doing. About 10 hours during the week is actually meeting with Christian college students on campus at IUPUI. I also teach there. The second bridge that we cross is into communities, and that's the whole focal point of this particular radio show. The radio show is to focus on community, to focus on folks in and around Indianapolis who are doing good, as I've already mentioned. And then the third bridge that we cross is into culture. Culture means that I'm speaking and writing on all different kinds of things and all different kinds of venues, always grateful for the opportunities to do that. The latest article, for instance, that was published in a journal was based on the theological roots of the abolitionist movement. But I was just in a church panel discussion 2 weeks ago discussing the issues as it relates to other religions and how do Christians interact with those who don't believe what we might believe. In this particular episode, however, we are joined by another believer in the community in Indianapolis, Bob Moore, who is in the IT field. And interestingly enough, before this particular show began, we're having a great conversation about what it was that Bob does, and we've been carrying on this conversation for a couple of weeks now. Bob, thanks ever so much for being here. We're grateful for your presence in the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with some simple biographical stuff. Tell us about who you are, your family, anything that you'd like to tell us about those things.
Well, I have one son. He's 17. He's kind of a key inspiration in my life. And I grew up and still reside in the Milan, Indiana area. We have our locations now in Cincinnati and in Indianapolis, so I keep the 74 corridor pretty hot. Like to drive, I guess you could say. And as far as, my interests and such, as you've picked up from our earlier discussion, I have a deep interest in people and culture and language and a little bit in old architecture, I guess you would say, especially some of the stuff that's been around for longer than we tend to keep it here in the States. But so those are kind of my things. I've been in business for years. I first got into the IT field officially for my business back in '98. Merged with my business partner here in 2016, forming with CSI. So we've got quite a few years between him and I as far as experience.
Well, let's stop there and just tell people what CSI stands for and the name of your business and so on.
Computer Solutions and Innovations.
Very good. Tell us about why you chose those words outside of computer. I think most of us get that.
Well, that part is the starting point. We have to deal with computers, computer networks. Solutions, definitely what businesses need. If you have a computer, it's great, but if it doesn't fit your business need, doesn't solve your problems, doesn't help you, and it's not taking you anywhere. And then innovations, I think that was the hardest word to come up with, and yet it really fits how we do our work, in that we don't always do it like everybody else does. We try to really master the various pieces of technology so that we can creatively and innovatively come up with cost-effective and logistically sound ways to benefit the business and strategically help them towards growth so that the technology is good for them. Unfortunately, technology has earned in many fields of business the necessary evil category. It becomes, well, I have to have technology. And so they either invest as little as they can and don't get much of a return on investment, or they invest quite a bit but don't still get much return on investment. It's never customized to them. They never learn how it really works. They use 5% of what their tech can do. So our goal is to bridge that gap and by innovative solutions. And one of the ways in which we do it is communication, making sure they're informed of what the technology can do, what their options are, in keeping with a good, strong business sense that I don't think a lot of technology people bring to the table. A lot of folks know how to implement technology and are very, very good at it, but they don't necessarily understand what businesses need logistically to stay in business. One of our goals, businesses can even often have kind of a standoffish approach. Hey, you're trying to ask too much about what we're doing. We just want you to do this. And my approach has to be kind of candidly sometimes, if you're hiring someone into IT and they're in information technology and they're going to have access to all your information resources, perhaps even, you need to trust them, and they really should care about you. A business that you hire, business to business, if they don't care about your business being here tomorrow, I've always learned you don't get hired back with a business that isn't there tomorrow.
Well, let's talk about you mentioned trust and care, and I want to come back to that. But before we do, tell people about maybe the businesses that you serve the most. I remember you mentioned, for instance, that you were in schools a lot.
Yes, I've got a long history in schools. Between schools and a couple smaller businesses, I've got a few clients that go back 20 years. And so kind of got started in those because I had a deep interest in networking, kind of what I call complex networking, with servers and lots of clients and automating the clients and software distribution. And in Southeast Indiana, we didn't have a lot of businesses that needed large networks. The schools kind of needed them more so than everybody else. So that created an inroad for me, an opportunity.
Yeah, very good. Well, let's come back to those two words, trust and care. And you mentioned that businesses are looking for people that they can trust, and you are going to give them care. So maybe kind of wrap that around in whatever way you would like. Tell us about the importance of those words in business.
Ooh, wow. The importance of those words in business.
Why do people trust you?
Why do people trust me?
Yeah.
That's sometimes actually a hurdle.
Okay.
Those who do trust us, the reason why I would say we have decade-long relationships with them is after we've had a chance to prove ourselves, they begin to understand that we do care about everything from them as a person to their business and business success, making sure that they have the information in front of them to make a good business decision. I've got some businesses that are kind of tech savvy and ask technical questions, and others who don't. They want to make sure I communicate the logistical business impact, and they trust me that I'll put those options in front of them so they can make those good decisions. And after you do that over time, and they've seen how their investment works and the stability of their IT, that's a huge piece. Is businesses sometimes, I think, forget how the instability of IT affects them. It can stop them from processing payments. It can stop them from communicating if their phone system goes down or their email server is unavailable. So, and these are things that negatively impact business. So when you talk about earning trust, is steering them in the right direction so that technology really becomes an asset to them. And when it's become an asset, something they can count on, they tend to count on the person that made it.
Yeah. It makes me think immediately when you talk about the issue of stability in business, how the baseline properties of what Genesis teaches in Genesis 1:1-2:3, that God has established a world of order. And so within that world of order, he's designed the world to work in a certain way. We simply are mirroring that creative element that the Creator has given to us by doing that very thing. So let's talk about that and make that the segue and talk about why it is so important for you as a business person to bring with you, without any apology to the business world, your view of life as a Christian.
You were mentioning that earlier, and I have to say, I can go on a sideline for just a second.
It's okay.
I was reading the other day, and then kind of went into a video online all about God and Him even rejoicing in His creation. And I think there's something to be said about that. If you try to bring things in order like Him, if we're doing by being in His image, mirroring His process, in no way to the extent that He does, but if you're taking an element of pride, caution of pride, in what you're doing, you do rejoice in what you accomplish that mirrors it successfully. And I think a lot of people don't have that. They don't rejoice in their work and what they see how it benefits others. I don't know that everybody, especially outside the Christian worldview, rejoices in the gains of others. And I think that's part of the problem. They focus on the gains themselves and not the gains of others. And we're very much, I think it's a Christian worldview inspired approach to say the win-win scenario that Ira and I both kind of formed a business around, which is the only way we're going to genuinely, sincerely feel like we win in business is if our clients are winning. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's harder to come up with a win-win scenario sometimes. But I think that's part of what sets us apart is we always strive for that. We want a win-win scenario. And then when you talk about why we bring that into focus, we both agreed forming the business, talking earlier, if we put it on our business cards and put it on our email signatures, and we don't have to walk in the door and only shake your hand and say, by the way, you ought to know we're a Christian-based business. We don't have to do that. We just put it in enough places. They can't do work with us very long without figuring it out.
Right.
And it opens the door for the opportunity to share the good word. They ask the question. People today are not as keen to ask about Christianity and are kind of reserved to be approached. But if they see you doing good work and they see it prominent in everything that you do, you're signing things with it. Right now in our new office location, we're getting ready to put Bible verse on the wall right when you come in the door.
Okay.
And we feel like that's important. Now, it's not, I don't think it's something that anybody is going to, pray it's not anything that somebody comes in and immediately would get offended and confront us in that manner. I think some people would turn their head and kind of pretend it's not there. But the moment they say, seriously, what make a difference? Well, how's that work? And we get that sometimes.
It's interesting that at least up till recently, I haven't seen a copy of it for a long time, but at least up till recently, the Indianapolis Star had a Bible verse right underneath its flagship statement. So this is not an unusual issue. Even at the United Nations, they're borrowing from Isaiah chapter 2, telling us to, beat our swords into plowshares. Of course, they give no context for that, but that's a whole nother discussion. So, putting a Bible verse on your board, even on our currency, we have, one nation under God. Whether or not people actually accede to that or not really isn't the issue. But you're making it very clear that this is who you are. And if you do good work, so let's talk about the work part of this, because I really do think that's imperative. When we talk about being in business, doing good work, you're talking about being excellent at what you do.
Yeah.
And so the excellence needs to be out there. People are not going to care if you're an atheist or a Christian as long as you do good work for them.
Very true. And, I said earlier, we feel like we've assembled, we like to call our A-team, folks who are very, very good at what they do. We've got, one very, very good at the, PC repair and upkeep. We've got another that's very good at the servers, and we've got another one's kind of doing research and development stuff and coming up with new innovative solutions for some clients in a variety of arenas. We've got another that's a kind of phone system specialist. We've got another who is our camera and premise security guru who really knows how to make that work. And I think that when you have people who love what they do and want every single install to be something that they can be proud of, and the customer's going to be absolutely thrilled with. It's not just, hey, we landed the job, we did the work, send us our paycheck, buy now. You actually want to have that springboard into something else. And I also, one of the things we have is our ideal client size a lot of times is what I like to say 10 systems rep. Somebody that's got enough investment technology, we can really start to save them money because they've got to rotate assets and computers and phones and security cameras today. It begins to add up. But, the small business, we invest in all sizes, up to hundreds of systems on a site, to that 10 to 20, even if they only have one PC. And I think we approach it from the standpoint of, yes, the guy with one PC in business isn't going to necessarily come back to us for at least for a while, if we did our job right. But if he's pleased with our work, he'll recommend us. And that's part of it. I think a lot of people look at the small potatoes and say, well, we're not even going to go for that. And, we don't see a reason to discern between them.
It sounds like returning business to me. I mean, that's basically how everybody's businesses operate. They want business to return to them.
Yes. I don't know that everybody does. Some people are about sales, but the problem, I'm always amazed to follow into a client's site and find out that the reason we're there is because they had this job done. Then the company never returned their calls again after the job was done.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that's one of the distinguishing things in IT is we have a lot of people who are not big communicators and they know how to implement IT, but they don't know how to do it business logistically. And I've also felt like when I've gone in behind some others in the business that I could see marks that my predecessor was really skilled. But when I hear the business owner say, here's my problems with it, I kind of perceive that perhaps they didn't have that business savvy to understand why it wasn't working the way the business owner intended.
Yes.
And that was what made the difference between what we did for them and what our predecessors did. Was we made the technology fit the need better than those who came before.
It interests me that there's really no difference in whatever it is that we do. I'm thinking about students that I know, for instance, at IUPUI, and we have these conversations about academics. And one of the things that I'm trying to communicate with them, these are young people, so 18, 19, 20 years of age. One of the things that I emphasize to them is the necessity of doing their work as an academic as excellent, so that the only way that anybody is going to know whether or not you actually have something to provide for them, or if a prof is looking at your work, how do you demonstrate to a professor that what you're doing is unto the Lord, even though to the professor they wouldn't really care about any of that. So our concern is that we even do our academic work with excellence, and this isn't something that we bypass in any arena of life. I suspect that all of us believe as Christians that we do everything according to the Colossians 3 statement, as if God is watching us. That's important.
As if he most certainly is.
Yes.
And that is, gosh, it'd be a challenge with some young folks.
Sure, it is, and it is actually.
I think back to some of the things I did in high school and college, and I was a believer then, but I don't know that you always connect those dots. It's sometimes when you get past that point in life, you begin to figure out that everything you do sets you up for the next step.
Yes.
That first job this person in college is looking for might actually be achieved because of the excellence they did in college, and because a professor gives them that letter of reference saying, I was just so impressed with, I gave this routine assignment, this person took it and ran with it. And obviously a student not going to run every assignment, but they do every assignment to the best of their ability, and they find the areas that are really their niche and throw themselves into the best they can, not just, well, I'm here and I'm looking for the grade and I want to go home. Why are you getting an education at all?
Right.
Yeah. If you're not going to, if you can't put excellence into what you're learning to do, are you going to put excellence into it when you actually go do it as a career?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's the living of life that we have to get young people to really consider. What is it, as you well say, that you're setting yourself up for into the future? What kind of disciplines are you or are you not establishing in life? And that's going to really make a difference in how you think about this. Just to put a point on it, I actually got a text message from one of my students just last evening who said, I brought some bad study habits with me from high school. I really need some help as it relates to how do we do this thing? And how do I maintain the discipline of making sure that I get my work done, all that kind of stuff. So these are ongoing conversations. These are not things that are surprising to me because I've been in education for so long, but it's one of those things that I have to repeat to people because they don't see the value of discipline, for instance. Certainly that's what you bring to the table in business.
I'm impressed that your students are texting that kind of a question.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And there's some of them, some of them are quite not only outspoken, but they're very direct, and they let their personal lives kind of hang out there a little bit, so.
I've seen that much, yes.
Yes. Well, we're going to be taking a one-song break here right in the middle of our program. Take a breather. For those of you who haven't noticed yet, I'm having a trouble with my voice here today, and that's not something that usually happens, but I've been fighting this cold here for about a week. So for those of you wondering what's happened to Mark's gravelly voice, there it is. You've been listening to Warp and Woof Radio Next. This is our first segment. Stay tuned for the second. Those of you catching up on the podcast later on will hear us immediately, of course. Josh Collingwood will be putting all of this together after the fact for us. And Polly Riddell is also to be mentioned here, as well as our producer, H.B. Bell, behind the scenes, making sure everything's functioning well. Warp and Woof Radio, one song break. We'll be right back. Those of you on Facebook Live will stay with us, hearing the continuing conversation.
YouTube Live, too, sir.
Oh, YouTube Live, too. Well.
Under the radio mix as I build up my audience.
Oh, look at you, building the audience. Oh,
YouTube over here.
You got Facebook over here. Okay, good. All right. Wow. Okay. Well, I got to stay up with everything.
For me.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the text message, for instance, from last evening from this individual who says, I need some help with this. So
that's awesome.
But it is. Honestly, it is awesome. It's the kind of thing that, as the work that I do at Comenius, is very important, where young people are actually saying to us, hey, this is important to us. So let's get to my website, see if I can, or to my Facebook page. Yeah.
Okay.
So there it is.
So where are they talking to us here?
Well, if I click on this, see, now I've got to hit the mute button here. So there's a bunch of people watching at the same time.
Okay.
So you can see that kind of stuff.
Good deal.
Yeah. We're giving a little tutorial on Facebook Live to Facebook Live people.
Yeah, I for all the technology I do, social media is not my area.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
So you can shut off the sound, all of those kinds of things. But over here is you have two screens three screens. So you can. I didn't realize that you were going to YouTube there, HB.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen many a time where people are online and you can see the comments rolling in, but I've never been one to contribute, I guess, or
Sure.
and been on this side of the equation.
Yeah. Right. Well, look at you now. You're a celebrity.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought.
It is, honestly, in some ways, it is kind of scary. You're out there now, boy. Look out.
It's like, maybe a lot of screens I might need to clean. The smudge not going to come off.
That's right. So when we come back for the second segment, let's see, maybe we'll talk about this relational emphasis, tie it back into the first segment, talk about business and what we just talked about, and then connect this maybe to, we'll go from here, maybe over to your Martin Luther story, that kind of stuff. But we'll start with the others, the emphasis on business as an other-centered relational component to life, and which just mirrors the Christian view of things. So
I got too much going on.
you have too many screens.
I'm used to this, man. Look,
Yeah, it's
I
okay.
got this one over here. I said, let me just take this thing out. I had it up on the wall, but I actually bought the wrong type. It's like a Rocky TV, so it's not a monitor.
Okay.
But I am going to get a big monitor up
Oh.
there that we can feed so people can actually see their live feed.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I just kind of drop in here, HB. You're the man. You're doing it.
Neat stuff
Oh,
going
he's
on.
been around since the inception. Don't let him fool you, man. I am practicing, as they say, a practicing physician. They really don't know what they're doing. I am a practicing RadioNext.tv owner, and I want to get with you because I actually am working with an organization where I recruit for one of the companies who was awarded the Next Level grant. And so I've got CompTIA plus certified people coming out every week, really, but they go to a 10-week curriculum, and then we're trying to place them into entry-level, positions that require the CompTIA plus certification.
Gotcha.
So if you know some people hiring in your industry, that would be perfect because they'll be certified and ready. And I actually do.
That would be a good place to have a resource.
Yeah, and so we can change that now because I just left there this morning.
All right.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So this is the triangulation effect that happens
Oh, yeah.
all the time. The
That's
relational.
a different address, of course, but the phone number and email works. And
I'm
we can get
email.
together if you have a card or whatever. Let's set this up because
I left those in the car.
no, it's no problem. But you just email me and I will hook you up because we are trying to do career placement. One of the things I do with my nonprofit, find a place where they can go to get educated, and then when they come out, how we're going to patch it up because.
Are these mostly college students?
These are 18. Anybody 18 years of older with a high school diploma, high school equivalency, and no post-secondary degree qualified for the free training.
Gotcha.
$3,700 worth of training for free, 10 weeks, 4 days a week, 4 hours a day.
And they have a variety of
They have-
CompTIA, A
yeah.
plus, Net plus,
Yes.
Security plus.
Absolutely. Coming in about 37.
Okay. Those of you on Facebook Live are not getting to hear my marvelous commercial here about our radio show. Podcast later on will. And we're back. Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We're glad to be with you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50. And as I say all of the time, our focal point here, being sponsored by the Comenius Institute, is to draw people from the Indianapolis community who are believers, Christians, and who are doing good work. And that's the real focus of what we're all about. This particular week, we have Bob Moore here with us. Bob is an IT professional, and his business is one that operates not only here in Indianapolis, but also in Cincinnati. As he told us here in the first segment, he actually heats up I-74 corridor there. So back and forth between Cincinnati. Just make sure that you keep your sports teams in line there and make sure that you continue to root for the Colts.
Oh, I was born and raised in
Yes,
I went to Purdue.
I'm teasing. It's okay. So yes, we love Cincinnati, but we're Colts fans through and through. So there you go. We in the first segment we were talking about business, and the whole focal point of our business discussion is always the same, and that is that we are Christians who are doing good. We're doing our work with excellence, and that's really crucial for us. And so our concern is always to put that kind of statement forward to the world, and that's what Bob and I were discussing here in our first segment. So I wanted to go back to something that Bob and I were talking about outside of this conversation, actually before we started this broadcast, which was about the issue of others. And so our focal point is always about others, and we're concerned about other people. And our concern, of course, once again, when we think about others, is relational concerns. So, Bob, let's talk about that connection to the life that we lead as believers. Let's talk about the connection between others and relationship and hospitality and welcoming people.
Gosh, I think I need you to springboard me back into where we were thinking.
That's okay. We were talking about the concern that the centerpiece really of the gospel message of all of the scriptures is that our focal point ought to be on other people, not on ourselves. And so from that, then we were talking about being hospitable and welcoming in all relationships, not just in business, but in all of life.
Right. I do think that is a part of what my business partner and I definitely focused on, is trying to be warm and greeting, and not, like you said, not just in business, but in people, because I think when you start talking about Christianity and how it plays in your life, if it doesn't bring you any joy, if people don't see any of that, and you're not welcoming, well, they usually don't want your witness. And on top of that, if you are centered about others, if you can have that genuine care about others and an inviting piece, you have the opportunity to share the good news where you don't otherwise. People, I don't know, I don't want to blame society, but we've kind of created an atmosphere where sometimes people get this impression that it's your club and my club, or your way and my way, and they don't think that there's a bridging of the gap, I guess.
Right.
And when they realize that you're welcoming and that you can relate to them, that's what we're talking about. If you have a way to relate to who they are, understand their struggles, their goals in life, what they want, and that you and they are not that different, well, then all of a sudden they see that striking, well, Christianity's the difference. How's that working for you? And you can bring that into play so that they understand what a role it is in your life, how it guides your decisions, how it makes your life better, helps you to cope with some of the challenges. If they know you're facing challenges, that's another part is if you can relate to their challenges, then everybody's struggling to deal with their challenges in some way or another.
Right. Yep.
If you're not struggling in any way, shape, or form, all I can say is you are blessed. And, so that's I think one of the key things we see is that the ability to relate to others that spurns conversation. And the more you sit down and talk with somebody, the more you have that opportunity for a non-believer to go in a direction that naturally opens the door to conversation of the gospel.
Your interest in this certainly is ours as well, and our focal point on welcoming people or being hospitable isn't just when somebody knocks on my door and I invite them into my home. It's being hospitable to them as people with their ideas and their person and their lifestyle and how they identify. It doesn't really matter. We're talking about other human beings that God has made in his image just as much as anybody else. And so we view people that way. That's really crucial and important to us. So let's take that to a different place. In some of the conversation you and I were having prior to the show, you were telling me about a situation that you had an opportunity to do some travel to a different country and came upon a different translation of the scriptures and so on. So take it from there. Tell us that story and why that's important in your life.
I was an exchange student to Germany after having hosted an exchange student. We head off as well. He convinced me to try my hand at being over there. And I fell in love with the country and the culture and just kept traveling back. And so I've been over there a number of times. He's been here a number of times. And it's forged a lifelong friendship that's well over 2 decades now.
Wow.
I call his mother my zweite, my second mother.
Oh, wonderful.
And call her at times and just carry on. So a very, very nice experience to have. And he knew I was a Christian, so he had, some time ago, got me this. It's literally the version to be handed out for study in a university, is what this is telling you.
And for those listening on the podcast, Bob is showing us the translation of Luther's Bible, correct?
It's the Bible as the Germans would read it, the Martin Luther version.
There you go.
And so I had that on the shelf, and I had thumbed through it a little bit. But in more recent years, kind of re-diving myself into religion and theology and how it was affecting my life, how it was affecting our business. Long discussions with my business partner, Ira, began to see videos and read things online about how the Greek worked and the Hebrew and things they would refer to, such as the genders and how they reflect and how the articles are. I'm getting into all that grammatical stuff.
Okay.
Who cares about, but,
I do. I care.
Especially in English, it doesn't exist anymore. We've lost a lot of those modifications of articles, and so English-speaking people who only speak English have a very difficult time, I think, maybe watching those videos and even understanding why that's significant. But what the bell went off in my head as I started learning more and more about that and how it tied into translations of the Bible is, I'll bet that's reflected. The German has a way to reflect that, or to show those same types of things as the Greek. So when they said, well, this is in the feminine in Greek, and therefore this part here has to be reflected back to that, I started flipping the Bible and going, let's see what it says. And yes, indeed, that's right there, and it's in the and it does reflect back. And sometimes I think the genders don't necessarily match for a noun from one language to another. Whatever gender that particular noun is in the German, when it's referred back to, the article shows that.
Just so you,
makes it interesting to me I think it gives me a deeper dive into what the meaning is.
Yeah. Just so you know, you're not alone in any of this. Again, just yesterday, sitting with these three guys talking about things, we actually had a conversation about grammar in the original language of the text of Scripture in Greek and Hebrew, and the importance and the imperative of that. The original language is of essence to the Christian view of life and things, that we believe that the original autographs as they were originally written are inerrant, that is, without error. And every part and every aspect of them is that way. So this is a very important issue, and to the point that some of us do care deeply for this. And frankly, if we don't care about it, I don't know who else is going to care about it. So keep caring, Bob. It's okay.
So thank you. No, I enjoy it. I guess I would say that's another area in which I geek out, not just technology, but I get into some of the language and how things work. And so when I hear these things, somebody starts describing how the language affects the interpretation, that means something.
Yes.
And I think, I hate to beat that horse, but I feel like if I ever had the chance to really encourage people, I'd say a foreign language, despite the international language of English, a foreign language is so powerful. I say that in part because it allows me to see historically things that perhaps are lost in the English language, and putting that totally aside, it has given me friends that I couldn't have if I didn't speak their language.
That's right.
And I think if you're really one who likes people and likes to meet people, meeting them at least two different languages isn't such a terrible idea.
This goes to the very issue that we're discussing here about hospitality and welcoming. The way that you demonstrate your care and love for somebody else is by meeting them where they're at. And the most important aspect of meeting people where they're at is understanding their language. Now, there are lots of different dialects within any given language. So, for instance, when I'm down on the campus of IUPUI and some student, HB is going to love this, when some student introduces me to some hip hop or rap artist, I've got to go into a whole nother cultural venue here to understand that whole process. So what did I learned about Little Nas X, I think, yesterday. And this young man is making a crossover between the rap and the country genres of all things. I mean, this stuff just blows me away. But to people who are into this stuff, this is really important to them. So we need to be very concerned and interested in whatever they're interested in. And the language is the way that we get there.
And when you say that, even without a foreign language in English, like you're just saying, there's a vocabulary to any field of interest you have.
That's right.
And and if you can meet someone new and start asking, what does that word mean? How it differentiates? I just heard you say this and that. Why is this different from that? And sometimes they roll their eyes and look at you like, seriously? Obviously, you have no clue about that. But if you have that genuine interest in people, and there's a lot of areas like that I don't have as much a genuine interest in. Like you said about earlier, everybody from race cars to this and that. I can go watch a race car, watch race cars go around. I enjoy it, but it's not something that I get into all the terms of how they're maintaining their cars and the engines and all. But in that moment when somebody's trying to describe it to me, it's important that I listen, I hear, and I learn. Now, I'm ashamed to say my retention isn't as good as it should be, but I try. And at least in that moment, I often have gotten schooled on new areas, and that's what you have to do. And because I rarely find anybody that will ask me anything about my world and what I'm interested in,
right,
or give me an opportunity to share something. That's how important it is for them.
And that's why we have you on the radio show today, actually. You were talking before in our meeting just prior to the show, you were talking about when we had Vanessa Stringer on, and we were talking about language and the importance of that, and her conversation with us. And I'll never forget this, man. It was like a slap in the face. When I said something to the effect of, well, Vanessa, it's obvious that you have an accent. And she just interrupted me and she said, I don't have an accent. You have an accent. And that was so I looked right at the screen, man. I looked right at the screen. I said, I just got schooled, man. So the whole point is that we have these built-in biases to whatever it is that we're invested in within our lives. And we think that, the way we think is the way anybody should think and whatever else. But this comes back to the welcoming, hospitable, caring for others kinds of aspect. How are we going to cross those bridges into other arenas?
Absolutely. I like the term paradigms of thought.
I like that too.
It actually comes out of a book I read about technology and the paradigm of thought between a centralized computer system model, the many computers, mainframes, going to the server-client model, the paradigm of computing, and then they said it shifted with the technology gurus' paradigm of thought shifting as to how they get the computing done. But I began to see paradigms of thought to almost every aspect of human life.
There you go.
We lock ourselves sometimes into our paradigms and we don't think outside the box. I think mind-blowing aha moments that allow you to sit in someone else's seat, even if it's only for a few moments, are very rewarding and interesting.
Yes.
And you can come away with some of the best feelings you've ever had in your life. And that goes back to that part, people won't remember what you say or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And if you make them feel important and
Right.
welcomed and understood,
Yes.
they remember that. And I
That's
can
right.
tell that when I see them again. And I'll tell you, one of the best impressions I can give is I worked in schools for a long time, and I had the opportunity to teach vocationally technology. And one student that was not in my class was a brother to one of the students in my class that was really struggling elsewhere. And I had the opportunity to help him through some math issues and kind of guide him with some words of wisdom, if you will, towards the applications. And I thought it was just routine. I'd done this so many times. But he remembered how I made him feel. And the way I knew that, and it took me about 3 or 4 times in doing this for me to figure it out. I would go through the school, do my routine stuff, keeping things up, and from across the room or across the entryway somewhere, he'd be walking. He'd see me, he'd stop, he'd call out to me, he'd come walking across, extend his hand, and shake my hand. And I finally had to say to him one day, gosh, you always stop to say hello. He goes, you just always make me feel welcome and good.
There you go.
And that's like, okay, wow. So when we talk about what we're doing for success in business, for success in making relationships, the offline nature of real things.
Right.
But then also the opportunities to witness and giving a good Christian witness. I think that's part of it, is you've got to be welcoming and inviting, and people remember you in that context. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge deal for everybody, and this isn't just a business discussion. Quite frankly, it's a relational, human-to-human discussion. One of the things that my students hear me say all the time is that humility is the essence of knowledge, and when you consider that you don't know it all, and that you recognize that other people know more than you do, no matter what it is. I mean, it could be about anything, and it might be something that you've really, truly invested a lot of time in. You know a lot about it. There's always somebody who knows more than you do. And so to recognize that, to bring that to the table and say, what can you help me with this? Help me to understand. That, too, is a welcoming addition to relational connections.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I work with so many people in the industry, and they'll say, well, how do you remember this, and how do you know that? And you're asking me to remember too much, is what some of the folks working at times will say. And that's why I say I've got the 18 right now, so say that, but they learn it anyway. When they say you're learning too much, I like to tell people, I say, if you think I know more than you, remember that what I know fits in a thimble. And it's true. Every day of my life, I'm learning more. And I look at what I knew yesterday, and I go, there was a time in my life when I thought, I'm not doing too bad. Tomorrow, I have it. You never know if it's field you work in or another field. There's always somebody knows more. There's always something more to be learned.
That's right.
And that lifelong learning, lifelong seeking via the scriptures.
Yeah, right.
If you don't turn your life into lifelong endeavors,
Yeah, makes a huge difference in how we view life. We've been talking here with Bob Moore, an IT professional, about not just his business, but about evangelism, and specifically this relationship between people, namely relational commitments, the welcoming atmosphere that any of us should have within ourselves to other people. And that brings into play hospitality. And we're not just talking about setting the table for a dinner. We're talking about setting the table for a conversation. That too is a hospitable act. So we've got about 5 minutes left here, Bob, before we need to end the show. If you were going to tell us something that you wanted to make sure the audience never forgot, or something about the business, or something that you want to make sure that everybody hears, what would that be? I'll give you a couple minutes to flesh that out.
Oh, that's a loaded one to ask. Well, I would say that Computer Solutions and Innovations is excited to be in Indy now. We're really still at the beginning of what this is going to take us to be. In that relational aspect, I think all of us are excited to meet new people here. So we've already started down that road, and I feel that one of the things we do is behind the scenes, you have to hear, we do talk and get excited about the people we've met, and we'll say how that person's interesting, what we learned about their business. I think that is one aspect. As an IT company that's maybe a little different, is we like to learn about the businesses. I surprised a fellow yesterday that as I was trying to leave us, I'm grabbing his pamphlets and asking him questions about his business. Some places they get that. Other places, I think this one, they were kind of like, "What? Why are you doing that?" And if you're looking at that, I think that's important. I was saying earlier, business to business, you have to care about whether you're there tomorrow, and that's kind of what sets us aside as we do have a business-oriented approach to technology. What we do is very broad because we do security-related cameras and security camera common, but door locking mechanisms. Then you get into networks. Today, one thing people don't realize in business is planning for the future is becoming more and more critical. We're moving into converged networking. It's been going on for a decade or more now, but where you have one network, we used to have multiple. You used to have a network of cables around your security cameras, and a network of cables around your phones, and a network of cables around your IT, your computers. And today they all run through the same system. We run the computers and the security cameras and the phones and many other things on your network. Sometimes your HVAC and your fire systems and everything can be running through that same network cabling and running through the same switches. And it can be used to save you tons of money and make your life easier, or it can be unplanned and can cost. I say that's where technology becomes a necessary evil, is the way people view it. And I think we like to come on the scene and show them it's an asset and make a new friendship and make something that they find mutually beneficial business-wise and friendship-wise. Returning business is huge. So real slow so everybody gets to hear it. What is your website? www.csitechpros.com. Tech Pros, so it's csitechpros.com. We've been listening to Bob Moore and your host, Mark Eckel. We've been talking about the issue of business evangelism and concerned, of course, with others and welcoming guests into our, not only into our homes, but into our conversations. We are constantly interested in finding new folks in and around Indianapolis who are doing good, that we might even have on the show. So if you're watching, listening to this, and you're thinking to yourself, I know so-and-so that really needs to be on the show, and somebody to be connected with Mark Eckel via Warp and Woof Radio, we'd love to have them here as well. We're grateful again, as always, to H.P. Bell, our producer, Josh Collingwood, who's going to take care of all the transfer of information later on from Dropbox to podcast. And Polly Riddell, of course, is the connector out in the community for us. We're grateful for all of that. Visit us at warpandwoof.org or comeniusinstitute.org.com to find all of our videos, all of our essays, all of our podcasts, all kinds of manner of things there that might be able to include, you might include in your thinking and watching and reading into the future. You've been listening to Warp and Woof Radio at RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We'll be back again next week. Until then, we'll see you.